All right, go ahead, Mac. Call this meeting of the Elko County School Board of Trustees to order. Will you please join me in a pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get started this evening, I regret to inform the board and the public that our superintendent has tendered her resignation for personal reasons. So with that being said, we'll move on to item 1.03, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Brian, seconded by Teresa to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the agenda is approved. Item 1.04, input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public, if any, and discussion of those comments. In the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. No action may be taken upon a matter raised. Madam Clerk. All right, individuals that have turned in a speaking sheet. First one is Mr. Gale.
To jump in the air with joy and beat your chest, or you may be repulsed and nauseated. I'm going to discuss this term because I think both of those reactions are inappropriate. And I'd like to share with you some of the thoughts I've had about it. The term is American exceptionalism. I believe that the term correctly captures a very positive attribute of what truly makes America. I do not believe it means that America is inherently better or that the Americans are naturally preferable to citizens of another country. The key to understand what American exceptionalism is found in the word accept. At the time of the founding of the United States of America, every single state in the history of civilization was established by the coercive imposition of the will of a small group, military or religious, upon another. For all history, this has been the pattern. A small group of people by virtue of their strength of arms or by some mystical divine right of kings, has inflicted mandates upon the vast majority of the population. This was the way the people had been ruled 100% of the time, except here in America. Now you might say, wait a minute, wasn't there some armed conflict at the founding of this nation, the Revolutionary War? I say, no. Our country was not founded at the Revolutionary War. The war freed the 13 colonies from an oppressive monarch. Those 13 independent states then established a special type of contract with each other by reason, by persuasion, by patient and urgent debate, and never by the force of arms or by invoking some higher power. At the time, every nation in all of history had as its legitimate foundation either force of death or a claim of divinity, except America. American exceptionalism means the power to govern the people has never come from any source other than the voice of the people. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Gale. Misty Atkins.
Hello, my name is Misty Atkins. I am going to talk about concerns brought to our attention regarding teachers. Number one, at the prior school board meeting, we heard over 100 teaching positions needing to be filled. This is concerning because we have been told that some teachers have been pressured to resign. Number two, teachers are also resigning because they have no liability coverage. SB 4 provided COVID liability coverage for the culinary union members, for example, but there is no protection for teachers. In fact, two major teachers unions have supported the move to exclude schools, saying it puts more responsibility on school districts to implement policies that protect teachers and students. The school board needs to offer protection to the teachers. Number three, teachers are experiencing verbal abuse by the administration and other teachers. Teachers were screamed at by admin for not having a mask on while drinking water, even though the teacher was more than properly distanced. Teachers were berated for not managing elementary students regarding mask wearing. And when teachers reached out for help, they were made to feel incompetent and incapable of managing their classrooms, which stopped them from reaching out for help. Teachers have been spending more time dealing with the mental health aspects of their students than they have been teaching. As noted above, when they seek guidance, they are looked down upon for asking for help. This will be followed up by more speakers.
All right, thank you. Christy Armbruster.
So continuing the concerns brought to our attention by the teachers. Number 5, the admin is instructing teachers to report mask violations from other teachers, thereby creating a hostile work environment, which has been fueling teacher resignations. Number 6, if teachers are having mental health issues due to aforementioned abuse and aggression, they are using their own insurance instead of services offered by the district for fear of retaliation, because they're being told to report to an admin after their contact with mental health services. This is clearly a HIPAA violation. Number 7, Christy Armbruster, Dr. Pediatrician, retired, all that. Number 7, we have been informed that students were threatened with loss of recess and detention for not wearing their mask. Although this is hopefully a non-issue going forward, it shows that abuse has occurred not only toward teachers by staff, but also toward students who are abused by some teachers. To summarize other concerns that we have mentioned in the previous meetings, number 1, we know that there are treatments available when someone tests positive, so we don't need masks, quarantines, or injections. Number 2, we will not be subjected to mandatory injections, which I hope we're addressing later. And that letter that we had discussed last week, we would recommend that we change verbiage because, quote, until further licensure and approval has been obtained, no vaccine should be forced upon the population, end quote. The licensure is coming, and so that shows a very weak spot because that's just going to, it's come, so that's going to be a moot point. And also, we should add that if the governor does not respond within 5 business days, that the board will resume full control of the COVID mitigation efforts in the Elko County School District. And that way, that we've had some issues getting correspondence back. And if there's no response, then great, we have our power and we warned you. And so I don't know if you can do that by certified mail to verify that he got it. And then that way you have the power. We are still trying to talk to Dr. Putnam about these things and no response yet. So I'm working on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Samantha Thompson.
Hello, my name is Samantha Thompson, and next year I'll be a freshman at Elko High School. Today I'm talking because of the national debate over how to teach students about racism and its role in U.S. history. Governor Steve Sisolak signed legislation as of June 2021 to add multicultural education to social studies curriculum standards. This is directly quoted from ABC News's article titled "Nevada Schools Reckon with Race, Triggering Polarization." I think that this should not be taught at any schools in my area or across or anywhere actually, because it is just another way for schools to indoctrinate us. If they teach us about everything that is racist about our past, they'll be setting us up to turn on each other, causing more bullying, violence, and separation between different races. I am not up here today to talk about which races are better than others, because they are not. We are all equal and no one is better than anyone else, especially when it comes to skin color. And that is why I am in favor to destroy this bill altogether. The last thing we need is any school to be teaching us about things in our past that are allegedly racist. When I moved from Spring Creek to Elko, a few kids told me go back to Spring Creek because this is not for white kids to be at our school. If I hear about white privilege one more time, I'm just going to make my voice heard even more, because there is no such thing as white privilege.
Thank you, Samantha. Rochelle Hoover.
Good evening, board members. I'm here to talk about critical race theory. This will change America as we know it. It will create racial divides, the likes of which we have never seen. The most important thing about you is your skin color and your race, not your behavior, environment, or even your values. No matter what you have overcome or accomplished, you will always be a victim of society if you come from a minoritized race. If you come from a privileged race, which according to CRT is only if you're white, then you are a racial exploiter. No matter what your situation, you are racist because you're white. And only white people can be racist. And there's no such thing as racism against white people because we are all privileged. CRT proponents assume racism is present everywhere and always, and they look for it critically until they find it, and they always find it. For example, I saw a perfect breakdown, and it said, if you own a shop and two customers walk in at the same time, one white and one black, you serve the black one first. It's because you're racist and you don't trust black people to be left alone in your store. If you serve the white customer first, it's because you think black people are second-class citizens. This is also racist, as CRT finds racism in anything, even if it has to read your mind or intentions. No matter the choice, it's always racist, and nothing you will ever do will change that. Last time I checked, didn't we just have a black president for 8 years? The most powerful position in the country. Ironic. Now we have sanctimonious teachers unions trying to bully us into indoctrinating our kids instead of educating them with anything valuable to be successful in life. Why do we want to worry about other people's privilege? Who cares? This is America. You make your own breaks. Seems we have all collectively forgotten what the civil rights movement was all about. And we are all supposed to be judging people by the contents of their character, aren't we? Or is that just something that those naive activists said back then? Anyway, privilege means that you have it better than most, not better than some. Maybe we should stop obsessing over race, gender, and sexual proclivities and get on with actually teaching. Racism is wrong, no matter which direction it goes, and two wrongs don't make it right. I am not ashamed of being white. It's the only thing I have no control over, and no teacher is going to put white guilt on my kids. I promise you that. And in case you don't know, in the cities where CRT has already been implemented, the white kids get to do the walk of privilege, or the walk of shame is what it really is. The repercussions from teaching this self-hate propaganda are only going to increase things like school shootings and teen suicides. And since Nevada is already 45th out of 50 nationwide for child well-being, let's just throw this nonsense on top of it, and I'll teach them to hate themselves even more. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Nicole Siratek.
Hello, my name is Nicole Siratek. The items that we'd like to talk about today are parental concerns. Items not on the agenda, even though parents and even school board members have asked. Attorney-client privilege waived so we can understand the monetary repercussions of not following unconstitutional mandates. Allowing a group speaker for better cohesion of our presentation, and most importantly, time conservation. We could have done this in 6 minutes, guys. A resolution to prohibit mandates for vaccines within the school district, which would also prohibit leveraging activities based on immunization status, and therefore prevent segregation and discrimination. I know we're probably going to address that later on. On June 14, parents of Elko County requested a private personnel meeting to address personnel issues, because it is stated at the beginning of every meeting, the personnel issues will only be addressed in a private meeting.
On June 15th, during a conference call with Mr. Cooney, he stated he had no idea to go about setting up a private personnel meeting. I am now publicly requesting a private personnel meeting to address multiple personnel concerns. In addition, $10.3 million was allocated in the CARES Act for the year 2020 for mental health services for the state of Nevada. I know all of that money did not go to our school district. However, when asking the teachers and the parents if mental health services were available to children in the district, should they be in crisis, for which there were many, many of them because I had to outsource them out of state. They said that there were no services available. Now, I know that there are services coming as of the next school year because I've met the therapist or the social worker that was hired from out of state at a lucrative financial contract to come here for 1 year. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this with our mental health issue and our suicide rates. And for the past 10 years that I have been a nurse in this county, there has been at least within the first 14 days of school being out, at least one successful suicide. Please note that term is a medical term. And there are multiple events of overdose and self-mutilation that have gone into your ER and been dealt with by EMS, for which I know of each one of those. Our students are in crisis, and I would like to know where the mental health money went.
Kim Marshall. Kim Marshall.
Good evening. In recent years, the term critical race theory has become a popular catch-all term used by mainstream media that is casually applied to any action or event that said media or political representative deems divisive or unnecessary. Case in point, here we are tonight because 2 weeks ago, this school board meeting was about the protest of CRT being introduced. I'm not here to talk to you about critical race theory because what many of you are opposing under the title of critical race theory is in fact not critical race theory. What I am here to talk about is Assembly Bill 261, which was recently signed by Nevada's governor. As Kristen will explain, this is by no means a new bill, but in fact, the very same statute that has been on Nevada books since 2009, the same one that provides for diversity and inclusivity in our academic standards and curriculum. The attention and opposition to the signing of AB 261 is, quite frankly, astounding. It evidences starkly that we need to have a balance in our schools between patriotism and America's truthful history of exclusion and violence toward Indigenous people and the enslavement of African Americans. Both things may exist at once. It is completely possible to be both an American patriot and a human who acknowledges the atrocities that America has committed in the past and seeks to know better by being informed and to do better in the future. An American patriot is able to recognize that there is a difference between America's ideals and America's practices. Honest and truthful conversations and lessons are the way to find this balance. We cannot grow and evolve as a nation until all of the pieces of our history has been laid bare in an educational setting. This is what educators do. They educate by presenting facts, timelines, settings, and events to students and encouraging the use of critical thinking skills to develop their own thoughts and opinions. We as a nation cannot continue to claim American exceptionalism while we keep turning out generations of Americans who have been educated with half-truths and omissions. Our schools and educators should not be restricted from adhering to AB 261. In fact, they should be supported in doing so. Our students should be encouraged to celebrate advances in science by pioneers from every race. They should enjoy poetry from authors of all origin. Our children deserve to learn of historic figures and events from all walks of life because America is a melting pot, and it's time we truly begin teaching melting pot quality tolerance and acceptance of diversity, whether it be race, ethnicity, religion, sexuality, or disability. One simply cannot form an educated, relevant opinion regarding our past unless they are first presented with truthful and accurate accounts of actions, events, laws, and shortcomings. Education should not be about a political affiliation. However, media and conspiracy theorists have in recent years made it so. How far would you go to support your political affiliation? Would you insist that your child be taught half-truths about America's history? Would you deny your children a complete and factual account of historical events in our history, such as the Trail of Tears?
Thank you. Your time's up. Thank you. Nicole Bowers.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Bowers. I am third generation Elkoan, and I have two daughters now being educated in the Elko County School District. I think one thing that all of us can agree on is that our system is undeniably flawed. The way in which we choose to go about changing that flawed system seems to have driven us to polar ends of the spectrum. Some think that if you stop teaching about the wrongs and atrocities of the past, that eventually we will all just realize we are equal. Those things that were put into place to drive us apart will fall away. That certain language and teaching about our sordid past should be outlawed. Then you have the other end that means to meet those marks of hideousness with history and education. Which one is right? We will never see eye to eye on that, I fear. What I can tell you is, in any personal growth or therapy situation, you cannot move forward until you have dealt with what has plagued your past: the ugly, the hurtful, and the morally corrupt. It is hard to look deep down and understand how we got to this point. Is it hurtful to lay the blame on one group of people? Absolutely. How we go about teaching those things is critical to the growth and prosperity of our nation. There is a miscommunication and a misunderstanding being driven by the media and political groups to keep us divided. One group cannot be expected to bear the brunt of the mindset change. The likelihood of that occurring is impossible, and it will only fuel more divisiveness. So what do? Sweep it under the rug and hope we can all find equal footing one day, or teach about all of our ugly flaws? No guilt, no heads on chopping blocks, just facts, history, and letting everyone who has been a part of building this absolutely imperfect country have their stories told. Every race, creed, ability, sexuality, and gender who has touched this land is an individual. We all have judgment to unpack. We are all responsible to each other, whether we like it or not. The fact is, we cannot teach our children how to move this country forward without each other. Our country needs this generation to be able to think critically about government, history, and science. We are a young nation, built on slavery, immigrants, and genocide, but we're also built on hope. And that hope is what will save us from ourselves. The hope that one day we can stop viewing each other as enemies and come together to understand how we might meet in the middle. That hope is in the students that fill our classrooms. It will not start with denial of facts and truths. It will not start without unpacking a ton of hurt, not blame, hurt. But we are not a weak people. We are not afraid of our mistakes, and we shouldn't be afraid to learn and grow. No one wants guilt and apologies. That won't change anything that has happened. We want growth, empathy, and understanding. I'm going to leave you with a quote. There are people in every time and every land who want to stop history in its tracks. They fear the future, mistrust the present, and invoke the security of a comfortable past, which in fact never existed. Robert F. Kennedy.
Thank you. E. Allen.
Hi, my name is Heidi Allen, and I was a special education teacher at Spring Creek Elementary. I'm actually moving to Atlanta on Friday. I'm not here to talk about the vaccine or whether it qualifies as one or masks. What brought me here today is something I saw and heard at the end of the last meeting regarding AB 261. I've noticed people of the community bring issues to you all beyond your scope of duty and well beyond your scope of expertise. Some of it seemed like a Facebook venting forum, but some of it was truly concerned individuals that had points most of us could understand and empathize with. I was able to either sit back and relate to the feelings of others while watching these meetings or get a little chuckle here and there, but I never felt I needed to speak. I became a special education teacher to represent a population that wasn't given enough equity in our schools. This is a population that sometimes feels they're dumb, sometimes they're ostracized, and sometimes parents have nowhere else to turn except the teacher and the school. I didn't struggle in school. I got A's, I played sports, and I had a lot of friends. This gave me confidence. I realized my privilege, and when I teach these kids and I see their struggle, I see their parents struggle, I see my privilege even more. I know that the system is set up toward the best readers. There is always a chart at every school showing the best. I always wonder how my students feel when it's so hard for them to read a couple pages at grade level. That's who I want to teach. So I look for literature, or I orally tell stories talking about struggles from Helen Keller to Temple Grandin. I have a friend that couldn't read until she was in 3rd grade, who is now a PhD and a college professor. I want them to know that. I want that representation. That representation gives hope. And when you have hope, you aren't defeated. Legislation created equity for the population I teach. Without it, they couldn't get the extra help they need. And to instill hope and confidence, people need representation. Yes, representation matters. The comment I heard at the last meeting was about AB 261, and it was a negative comment. But what happened next was members literally asked, board members, is there anything we can do about this? So here are the amendments made to AB 261 that has been around for years, and I'm sure you all knew that. Instruction is regarding contributions to science, the arts, and humanities of Native Americans, persons of marginalized sexual orientation or gender identity, persons with disabilities, persons from various racial and ethnic backgrounds, including but not limited to African Americans, Basque, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islander, persons from various socioeconomic statuses, immigrants, refugees, persons from various religious backgrounds, and any other group of persons the Board of Trustees feel they need to represent. So I ask, what are you trying to stop here? This list just represented every single one of us in the room. Why don't we all deserve representation? And why would we waste our time on this when there are so many other real issues the district needs to address? Thank you.
Heidi. Diana, is it Balaam or Bailey? Bailey.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I appreciate it. My name is Diana Bailey, and I just wanted to clarify a few things regarding critical race theory, what it is and what it is not. There is a great deal of confusion over what critical race theory is. The term is now referenced as the basis for all diversity and inclusion efforts in our school systems, regardless of how much it is actually informing those ideas. Let me explain what critical race theory is and what it is not, so that as we move this conversation forward, we are all able to easily differentiate between including diversity in education versus teaching critical race theory. Critical race theory, or CRT, is an academic concept that is more than 40 years old, created by legal scholars Derek Bell, Kimberly Crenshaw, and Richard Delgado. The core idea is that racism is a social construct, something that is deeply embedded in our country's legal system, rules, and practices, implemented by various levels of government and embedded in our economic system, culture, and societal norms through policy. Examples of these policies include, but are not limited to, the following: redlining and residential segregation, police violence and unequal punishment for crimes committed by people of color, inadequate healthcare and access to healthcare. CRT seeks to critically examine the laws as it intersects with issues of race and to actually challenge mainstream liberal approaches to racial justice. In short, it is a system used to examine and question policies. This academic understanding of CRT differs greatly from representations in the media. Critics claim this theory divides people into the oppressed versus the oppressor and promotes intolerance and discrimination against white people in order to achieve equality. This is not the case. CRT primarily emphasizes outcomes, not individual beliefs. It calls on outcomes in our legal policies and elsewhere to be examined and corrected where inequality looms. CRT is not a curriculum or created in any way to be a classroom curriculum. It cannot be used to expose white children to supposedly damaging or self-demoralizing ideas. It is not a way for liberal propaganda to be covertly disseminated among students in the public school system, and it is not a tool for teachers to use in an effort to shame or indoctrinate our children. Much of the scholarship on CRT is written in academic language and published in journals that are not easily accessible to K-12 teachers or the public in general. No one in the Elko County School District is encouraging teachers to incorporate CRT scholarship into their classroom. In conclusion, I would like to point out the obvious. This topic does not deserve the level of attention we are giving it. Our Our teachers, children, administrators, and community are dealing with far bigger problems, including what has been brought up: teacher shortages, poverty, substance abuse, bullying, a lack in mental health resources and sex education, and school safety, to name a few.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kristen Guthrie.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Guthrie. I hold a bachelor's degree in history and political science with an emphasis on secondary education. I also hold a master's degree in curriculum and instruction. I recently retired after 30 years of teaching social studies and English with the Elko County School District. During my tenure, I served on the Nevada State Social Studies Council and was a member of the committee that revised the Nevada State Social Studies Standards in 2008. I am here before you to discuss multicultural education in the state of Nevada. On July 1st, 2015, Assembly Bill 234 came into law. This bill requires Nevada teachers licensed after July 1st of 2015 to complete a course in multicultural education. On July 1st, 2018, Senate Bill 107 came into law. This bill requires high schools in Nevada to provide instruction in ethnic and diversity studies. In 2018, the Nevada Academic Content Standards for Social Studies were revised and approved to include a multicultural component. This includes educating students on the diverse contributions made by men and women from various racial and ethnic backgrounds, including, without limitation, information relating to contributions and impact. Assembly Bill 261, which goes into effect July 1st, 2022, amends Nevada Revised Statute 389 and requires that the Board of Trustees of each school district and the governing body of each charter school shall ensure that instruction is provided to pupils enrolled in kindergarten through grade 12 in each public school within the school district or in the charter school as applicable on the history and contributions to science, the arts, and humanities of Native Americans and Native American tribes, persons of marginalized sexual orientation or gender identity, persons with disabilities, persons from various racial and ethnic backgrounds, including without limitation, persons who are African American, Basque, Hispanic, or Asian or Pacific Islander, persons from various social economic statuses, immigrants or refugees, persons from various religious backgrounds, and any other group of persons the Board of Trustees of a school district or the governing body of a charter school deems appropriate. To be clear, Assembly Bill 261 is not critical race theory, and it serves to enforce subject matter that is already in place and is being taught as required through the Nevada State Academic Standards for Social Studies and Nevada Revised Statute since 2018. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Cindy Pearson.
Thank you for allowing me to come and speak with you this evening. I'm here regarding, and it seems kind of trivial because we're talking about such teacher shortages, but it is actually a teaching position that has not been replaced in Wells over the last year and a half. So I sent a letter to all of the board members regarding this. Basically, you know, my question is, what happens when you combine two full-time workloads into one? Seems like a rhetorical question, but the reality is you reduce the quality. And this is the reality in Wells right now. So what happened during the semester, the fall semester of the 2019-2020 school year was that the 7th, 9th, 11th, and creative writing English teacher was moved to the acting dean of students. This left this position vacant, and it was filled with a long-term substitute at that time. The creative writing class the following year was canceled, so that went down the tubes with that teaching position as well. There were approximately 80 students that teacher was responsible for teaching and educating in the English language arts. The same year, Wells lost their ag teacher and a business teacher, and those staff vacancies have both been replaced. Okay, the question that I have is, if there is the ability to replace those staff, why would an English teacher not have been replaced? I haven't gotten an answer from administration on that exactly, just that Elko County School District Administration made the decision not to rehire that position. Quality of education is crucial to the successful recovery from the devastating effects of COVID-19 on the students. As we all know, English is one of the most important subjects because it affects learning in all other core content areas. Our students need the best quality education to overcome the difficulties faced during the school year 2020-2021. For example, if a student cannot read and comprehend, they will be unable to analyze a math word problem. If a student lacks English language skills, they will not be able to complete a social studies or history reading assignment or to demonstrate what they know about that topic. Students with poor English language skills will become deficient in other academic areas as well. Frustration with academics causes students to feel like failures. Poorly prepared students are more likely to give up and drop out. English language preparation is the most important foundation to lifetime learning. English language arts requires the strongest teaching format possible. Neglecting to do so sets up these students for failure in their adult lives. Does the Elko County School District really want to provide for students' basic educational needs?
We have a copy of your. Okay, thank you. As I was saying, we do have a copy of your written statement that will go into the record. That's the last speaker card that we have. All right. Moving on. Mr. Kelly, can you give us a report on the coring project that you've undertaken?
First of all, I need to give you a brief history of what'll happen. Back in 1985-86, the district entered into agreement with Best Key Manufacturing. We had a 30-year patent on the Best Key, which means nobody could buy the cores or that blank key to make keys for that. So about 6 years ago, we lost that patent. So starting with Wells, we rekeyed that to the Schlag key, which we have now a 20-year patent on. We've also recorded all of Wendover, Spring Creek Middle School, all of our new projects, including Liberty. The science building will record that way. Also the performing arts, we've done Oahe, and we did Southside earlier. And once we finish up the fire alarm testing, we will do Flagview also this year. We're systematically kind of going through doing 2 or 3 schools a year as needed.
Okay. Thank you.
And just basically that patent means anybody that has that Best Key can now make our keys. So as long as you have a patent, nobody else can make that key. So right now our Best Key is vulnerable because somebody else with that equipment could make a key and get into any of the schools.
Oh, okay. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Moving on to item 3.01. Receipt, review, and possible approval of a letter to the governor regarding mitigation measures for possible action. The board.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think we need to address the Elko County School Board meeting schedule under 2.01. Do we need to approve that, or is that just for it's non-action?
It's a non-action item, isn't it?
Okay, sorry, but I think for the public to know that that new schedule is there and that the meeting schedule is on
Okay.
the board agenda.
All right, yes, and everyone can see the schedule is showing that we rotate our meetings, that the board meets in each one of the outlying areas and getting back, which that was set aside during the COVID situation. So that is available, and we'll make sure that it is on the website so everybody can see that.
And I think we just note that we never meet the second Tuesday of July for our information.
Yes, There's
Maybe
one
the
meeting
20th,
in
July
July. It's usually the fourth Tuesday. Yeah. All right. Moving back to the letter to the governor. All right. If we can get that pulled up. The board held a workshop and we spent quite a bit of time going through, working on this draft. And we've had the draft that we adopted, that we had put together. We haven't adopted it. That's the purpose of tonight's meeting and this agenda item. So we will be going through and hopefully as we go through and look at this, if there are any amendments as we go through this, we can get our clerk to go through.
Won't make changes until the board has said yes, because I don't want to be.
For sure.
But everybody will be able to see what's on there.
All right. I guess best thing to do is I'll read through the letter as it currently sits, and then we'll bring it back to the board to if there are any changes that we think that we should have. Dear Governor Sisolak, we, the Board of Trustees of the Elko County School District, are writing to share concerns of the board, parents, educators, students, and community members. Although we appreciate your efforts to keep all Nevadans safe during the COVID pandemic, we have serious reservations about what the future might bring. We spent the last school year managing a district of nearly 10,000 students during a pandemic. Needless to say, we learned a lot of lessons along the way. The most important lesson learned is that children, having been blessed with amazing immune systems, are extremely resilient. The board recognizes this resilience and the importance of parental, guardian choice in regards to the welfare of their children. Indeed, this is a basic constitutional right protected by the 14th Amendment. Our concerns are as follows: potential extension of the mask mandate. 2, the possibility of mandatory COVID immunization. And 3, potential restrictions on participation in school activities based on immunization. These issues are weighing heavily on the board and our communities. We would like to receive some assurances from your office addressing each of these concerns. For the academic success, athletic excellence, and mental well-being for our students, it is respectfully requested that mask mandates and any mandatory COVID vaccines not be required in subsequent school years. In addition, student participation in activities should not be restricted based on COVID immunizations. The wearing of a face covering and COVID vaccinations should be an optional medical decision left up to parents, guardians, and their children. Each community, based on local factors, should determine the necessity of mitigation efforts. Of equal, if not greater importance, are the current and potential directives, mandates, and policies of our state regarding COVID vaccinations. NRS 392.4351 contains a list of immunizations required for school enrollment. Although this statute was not amended by the recently concluded 81st legislative session, there is growing concern that the COVID vaccine could be added by regulation or emergency directive prior to the start of school in the fall. This seems like a real possibility given the status catch-all language regarding such other diseases as the local Board of Health or the State Board of Health may determine. As you are no doubt aware, the COVID vaccine has been designated by the FDA as emergency use authorization, EUA, Until further licensure and approval has been obtained, no vaccine should be forced upon the population, least of all upon the children. Even without the EUA designation, the decision of whether or not to inject a child should be made solely by a parent or guardian. Under no circumstance should the right to a public education guaranteed by the Nevada Constitution be made conditional upon receipt of any vaccine. The Elko County School District Board of Trustees, with support from our local communities, requests mask mandates and any mandatory COVID vaccinations not be required in ensuing school years. And furthermore, any mitigation efforts to be left to local control. Thank you for your time and prompt attention to these important topics. Sincerely, Elko County School District Board of Trustees. All right.
I'd like to commend, first of all, Teresa for making whatever we came up with look like.
Doing the editorial. And
Yeah, the end was a little sketchy at the last meeting.
You guys all did a great job.
yes. The red pen. Anyway. What?
I-
accept this letter. Second.
Okay, it's been moved to accept the letter by Ira, seconded by Brian. Is there any discussion?
I just had a comment that was brought up by someone commenting about the EUA designation, but the letter does indeed point out, even without the EUA designation, the decision of whether or not to inject a child should be made solely by a parent or guardian. So I think that pretty much covers that issue.
Okay,
As for what the workshop did say, anyway, we do have policies in place in our district to protect our parents and our students, regardless of vaccine at this point.
that was a point that was brought up. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the motion passes. All right. Right, moving on to, very good. And
And this will be certified.
to get this, it'll be certified, and all board members will need to sign this. And do we have that up here? Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you, Cassie. All right. 3.02. Receipt, review, and possible adoption of a resolution authorizing an interfund loan to the food service fund from the general fund. Julie, we're going through, and at this time of the year, for the public's information, during the June meeting, we go through and we have to do budget augmentation to be in compliance, I think, with the Department of Taxation. So we have a number of these resolutions that we'll be going through. So
I guess I'm available for any questions. So for the food service fund, it's routine to have an interfund loan as of June 30. Grant revenues might come in July, August. So as of June 30, the general fund would float the money until the grant revenues come in. So these just cover that negative cash as of June 30.
all right, any questions, Julie, with regard?
Go ahead.
Oh.
I just had a question, and it actually applies to all of them, because I noticed that it's all dependent on receiving this grant money. Are we like 100% confident that we're going to receive the grant money?
Yeah, most of them are reimbursement basis. So we spend the money and then the revenue comes in. So this is floating the money until the reimbursement comes in.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right,
And just to clarify, this is an every year.
yes, yes. At this time of the year, we're balancing everything back up, so.
I move to accept.
I second.
All right. It's been moved by Teresa, seconded by Luke to accept the interfund, the resolution authorizing the interfund loan to the food service fund from the general fund. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye and the interfund loan is approved. Moving on to item 3.03, receipt, review, and possible adoption of a resolution authorizing an interfund loan to the Adult Education Fund from the General Fund for possible action.
Same thing, the grant money is expected, but until it gets here in July, August, the general fund floats the money.
Okay. Any questions?
I move to approve.
Second.
All right, it's moved by Ira, seconded by Teresa to adopt the resolution authorizing the interfund loan to the Adult Education Fund from the General Fund. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the resolution is adopted. 3.04, receipt, review, possible adoption of a resolution authorizing an interfund loan to the State Grants Fund from the General Fund for possible action.
Move to approve. Second.
All right, moved by Brian, seconded by Luke. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the adoption of the resolution passes. 3.05, receipt, review, possible adoption of a resolution authorizing an interfund loan to the federal funds from the general fund for possible action. This one, is there anything specific with it?
It's the same thing. A lot of the federal grants are reimbursement basis. So we've spent the money for the purpose of those funds. We remit a request for reimbursement and those trickle in July, August, and we'll repay the general fund.
All right. Okay, it's been moved to approve. Who had the second over here? Teresa. Any more discussion?
I just want to make one comment. I appreciate the resolution format that you did on these.
Oh,
It
yeah.
really helps
Thank you.
to outline what we're doing with
Thank you.
these, and I'm sure the public appreciates it as well.
All right. Everyone, we're ready to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the resolution is adopted. I think 3.06, receipt, review, and possible approval of resolutions to augment the budget of the general fund and special revenues fund for the 2020-21 school budget, school district budget for possible action.
Move to accept the augmented budget.
All right. It's been moved by Brian, seconded by Robert to approve the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying.
I was.
Okay, discussion.
Discussion, yeah. I was
Yes.
just waiting for you to say that. So
Okay, I'm
I just
sorry.
had some questions on page 4. There was a significant increase in the revised expenditures for athletics and instruction and the co-curricular
Yeah.
activities.
So those actually aren't higher than they usually are.
Okay.
Back when we did the final budget, we didn't know how this year was gonna look. We didn't know if sports were gonna kick up again, and didn't know if we were gonna be paying the coaches and everything. And so the budget was cut. Those were ending, sports started, coaches were paid. So I had to reallocate to up that because.
And will that cover then the summer programs as well? Or any of the sports programs?
If it's after June 30, it'd probably come out of next year.
Okay.
So what we did here, the food service fund revenues were higher than we budgeted, so I was able to lower transfers out And that was reallocated to cover some of the co-curricular athletics and student transportation.
Okay, any other questions? All right, hearing none. Did we already have the motion? Yes. Yep, all right. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the resolution is passed. 3.07, receipt, review, and possible approval of request to conduct a surplus sale for possible action. This is a normal activity that the board has to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, moved by Teresa, seconded by Brian. Ira, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. All right. Is there any discussion?
Question,
Yes.
Is there a significant amount that we have right now in the warehouse or?
I don't know, Josh. Would you like to know, spring out?
I had a couple questions. Like, is this advertised to the public and does it occur on a certain date every year? Or do you guys just decide when you have enough stuff and?
It normally happens annually. If it's determined that there isn't enough, microphone, if it's determined that there isn't enough stuff, then it might be semi-annually or every other year, biannually. But and then the date, Josh will determine a date now that Josh Medeiros will determine a date after you've approved for it to happen. And yes, it's advertised through the school district and public proclamation.
Thank you.
So basically, anybody can bid on any of the items
Mhm.
and it's a sealed bid, if I'm correct. They send it in and.
If I remember right, yeah. I haven't looked at it too close for a few years,
Yeah.
but
Seems like that's how it goes.
I know he's got some stuff set outside of the warehouse alongside, so,
Mhm.
yeah. All right. Is there a motion?
There is.
Yep, all right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the request to conduct a surplus sale is approved. Moving on to 4.01, the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay,
Second.
been moved by Ira, seconded by Robert to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the consent agenda is approved. Board matters 5.01. Okay, report from our NASB director for possible action.
Meeting's still on for Saturday.
All right. And we've got individuals which board members are planning on attending that? All right.
And it starts at 9:30, correct?
There's an NASB joint meeting at 9. And it'll probably last a couple hours. Then the rest of it is.
Presentation.
Show up at 11.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
I just had a question. Are there any portions of those that are public or open to the public if they want?
That NASB meeting,
Yeah.
I don't know if they are. I couldn't answer that.
Okay.
Nobody has ever showed up.
There's not a lot of people wanting to get in on that one, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, is that it?
Yep.
Thank you. All right, items from the board members, non-action item.
I have some questions, a couple questions.
Okay, Robert?
Being the new guy, I just don't know what the process is of getting items on the agenda. What is that process? Who does it go through? Who approves them? I mean, they have to be approved to be on the agenda, correct? Whether it's coming from the board or the public.
Yeah.
So what's the process of that?
Well, generally, goes through admin. As board chairman, I can propose specific things. I take from the board to add to the agenda. And that's basically how that goes. We take things from public comment as well to include in there. Obviously, looking at the length of the meetings and things like that plays into it.
Because it was requested last meeting by
Yep.
Mrs. Wines, I should say, to have an item on there. So I just kind of wondered why it wasn't and where that ball was dropped or,
Yeah.
you know.
Probably
forward,
dropped it. It was dropped. If anybody dropped it, it was me. So,
just want to make sure we're going forward.
yes.
And then with the sports, if somebody files, I just want to make sure I clarified it. Somebody filed an exemption if they require the COVID shots. If somebody filed an exemption for the vaccinations, they're covered, right? They're not going to be excluded from sports. Is that what we talked about? Okay, I just want to make sure.
And from my understanding from what Mr. Smith pointed out last time, if you've done it once in the career, in your academic career, you don't have to, you don't pop up every year. It's over, it's done.
Okay, I just want to
correct.
I believe so. I don't think we have to have submitted annually.
All right. Other items from board members.
Yeah, I had a few things, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
First of all, I just want to say that I did tour the Elko High School Science Building and Performing Arts Building today. The science building is pretty much done. It's amazing. I made the comment, it has better labs in it than I had when I was in college, but that was a long time ago. So, but it's an truly amazing building. I think it's going to be a huge asset to Elko High School. And the auditorium is quite a ways away from completion. However, I have been assured that some students hopefully will be moving in August. So I'm not sure the building will be completely done, but hopefully the classrooms will be completed. And so those buildings are going to allow for a huge expansion on that campus. And so that was my tour of the Elko High School buildings. I had a couple of other questions. And one is, what are we going to do if the governor does not lift the mask mandate, or if the COVID immunization does become mandatory? So what I'm wondering is if we need to have this on even if it's on as a non-agenda item for now going forward, just so we can have the ability to discuss those things and try to come up with a plan just in case, our letter goes in that circular file. So that's one thing I would like to see, is even if it's a non-agenda item, at least it's on there and we can have the ability to discuss how to move forward if we are going to move forward, and if so, how.
Okay.
The other item I had is regarding AB 261, and I have provided a copy for everybody on the board. And I do agree that teaching diversity is not a bad thing. What people didn't point out, however, is that there was an addition, section 2, number 3, which says that instructional materials, including without limitation a textbook, must not be selected by the state board pursuant to subsection 1 for use in the public schools unless the state board determines that the instructional materials accurately portray the history and contributions to science, the arts, and humanities of the groups of persons described in section 1 of this act. What that says to me is that takes away local control for us to be able to choose our own instructional textbooks. And I do have a problem with that. And I don't know how many of you are aware, but there are actually already units out there that are being proposed to be used for teaching. You can call it critical race theory, multiculturalism, whatever you want to call it. They're already out there and being used or being proposed to be used. I have personally a lot of questions that I would like to have answered, which is why I would like to have this on as an agenda item. So that, no, not right yet. You'll have a chance afterwards. So I would just like to have this on as an agenda item so the board is able to discuss it. I have a lot of questions like, are we currently teaching these lessons to our children? If so, where can we find them? Who develops that curriculum? Are we sending our teachers to training? And can we do that internally? And finally, on that, I would like to just say that, and actually, I think some of you guys brought this up. What we need to focus on in this school district is teaching reading, writing, arithmetic, sciences, where we are completely failing our children. Yes. Focused on all this other stuff and focus on the things that really need to get done. So that's my little rant for today.
Thank you, Candace. Any other comments, board comments? All right.
I just want to say, just looking at the letters of resignation and retirement, I'm sad to see a lot of the people go that have decided to retire. And I don't think we should let a meeting go by without mentioning Mr. Malky, who is retiring in Spring Creek. He has been a fantastic teacher, a fantastic coach. He has created a program where he ends up with students who are nationally recognized athletes. He has taken kids at the middle school level to math counts. I mean, he has been a phenomenal employee of the district, and he will be greatly, greatly missed, as well as his wife.
We noted. Thank you. Other comments?
I'd have a few things. So close to a decade ago, I actually made one of the most important decisions in my life, apart from marrying my wife and having children, was to do it, right? Take a note and become an American
Is she
citizen.
watching online?
No, she doesn't. And the presiding judge at that ceremony said things that actually do ring true still today, that we're a young nation, that we are not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. And as I've said in past meetings, the more we're divided, the further away we're getting to our destination. And we're not teaching our children the best way to act. And sadly enough, we still, just a couple of weeks ago, we lost two. One was a horrible accident. One should have never happened in our district. I mean, there's no reason why a 15-year-old should not think that he has no other output. So that being said, if it's CRT, we can have this conversation, same as the mask, same as the vaccines. I can't tell you you're right or you're wrong. You can't tell me I'm right or I'm wrong. We interpret things differently. I read this year alone more tax bills and more Senate bills and more Assembly bills than I ever thought in my life I would ever read. The SB 19 talks something similar to this bill. But like I said, they're not umbrella terms. The best way, we don't need to audit the teachers. We don't need to put more stress on the administrators, on this district. And if our kid says, hey, why is he like this? Why? It's like, that's how you deal with it. It's not, if you actually are using a teacher or a district as an excuse for your child's downfall, it's on you as a parent. And I don't mean that in a mean way, but I mean that as a parent. My daughter struggled, and guess what? I blame myself. It's nobody else's fault. And what we need to do in this district, in this community, we've lost so many people this year. Some great teachers, some great administrators, some great superintendents. Why? Because we don't see eye to eye? Because I'm going to belittle you if you don't agree with me? No, We have to move forward. And I've said this time and time again. What we need to do is, I believe Brian said it last meeting or at the workshop, we need to focus on academic achievements. We need to say, hey, teachers, what do you need? What can I give you as a board so that you can teach these children? That's what this board's about. We can deal with the issues that come as our community. If I don't know what CISLAC is going to do in September, I don't. But whatever he throws at us, if we're a strong community, we can get past it. And we will as a community. But why spend so much time and be so aggressive today for something we don't even know if it's going to happen? I get being ready, but we can't waste time. Our administrators, some people criticized last year, oh, there was no communication. Bring it up once again to the government. It would literally be, as a business owner, I know, because Thursday night, we'd have to go on Facebook to see what CISLAC said so that Friday we could adjust and retrain our staff and get more equipment. Same thing with the administrators. Do you know how hard it is on a Friday afternoon? Say, hey, by the way, Monday it's full in school person. They're like, okay, they have to scramble. They have 48 hours to figure it out. Teachers have 48 hours to figure it out. So the stress, and we've all thanked the teachers and the support staff, but these administrators were put through so much stress. The central staff is put through so much stress. I'm sorry, as a community, I'm embarrassed. I am. Because we need to move forward and we need this to be the best community for our children. That we have differences, that's fine. I'm an adult, I don't really care. But my child deserves a fighting chance. And your child does too. That's all I have to say.
Definitely everybody's decision, the 7 people that are sitting up here, our number one objective, and it will always be, is the children, your children, the children of this district. And we've got 10,000 of them here. So we're not talking a small group. But I'm sure that every one of the people that are sitting before you right here takes their job extremely seriously. And we thank you. The input from the public is beneficial. We always want to hear from the people, and we just need to remain focused that it's the children that we're dealing with. All right. All right, moving on. Item 6.01, approval of the accounts payable. And this time, we're going to go through and do.
Oh, the split up?
Yes. First of all, any disclaimers?
I am going to abstain from the Gallagher Ford because I am an employee there.
Okay. So.
Let's start with that one.
Yep.
And then we'll do disclosures on.
Yep.
So I move to approve the Gallagher Ford accounts payable.
I second to approve.
Okay, moved by Candace, seconded by Luke to approve the Gallagher Ford accounts payable. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the accounts payable for Gallagher Ford is approved. Moving on to the Wells Rural Electric.
I will disclose that I have a family member who's employed by Wells Rural Electric, so I will be abstaining.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, moved by Luke, seconded by Ira. All those in favor of the accounts payable for Wells Rural Electric accounts signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and Wells Rural Electric accounts are approved. Moving on to the remaining accounts payable. Is there a motion?
I second.
Moved by Ira, seconded by Luke to approve the accounts payable. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the accounts are to be paid.
Sorry, I didn't say aye, sorry.
Thank you, Luke. All right. Item 7.01, input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public. This is the second public comment, if any. and discussion of those comments in the interest of privacy and due process. Public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. No action may be taken upon a matter.
I believe Kristen, yeah.
Kristen, please.
I can't tell you when this went into effect, but local control of textbook selection was removed quite a number of years ago. Mr. Zeisler, do you know when that occurred?
It's been something we've been discussing here at the board for quite a while, actually, that we get a menu of options and then we have to choose, and that's something.
Right. I can tell you that the
Not good.
social studies textbook and curriculum is from 2005. It's been pushed back numerous times for science and math curriculums to be approved and adopted. So your social studies curriculum is over 16 years old. But it is in its NRS 389-850 final selection by state board, exception for charter schools, accurate portrayal of cultural and racial diversity in society. And it says the state board shall make the final selection of all textbooks to be used in the public schools in this state, except for charter schools. If a textbook proposed for selection is in a subject area for which standards of content have been established by the council to establish academic standards for public schools pursuant to NRS 389-520, the state board shall not select the textbook unless the state board determines that the textbook adequately supports the standards for that subject area. So the local, I've served on a number of textbook committees throughout the course of my career with the county, with the school district, I'm sorry, English and social studies. And the last curriculum program that I was involved with was 2005. And as social studies teachers, we did push numerous times to why, because every few years it's supposed to cycle through with English, science, math, and social studies. And social studies has been pushed to the background numerous times. So I don't know exactly again when, and again, this assembly bill, this 261, just seems to me to be enforcing things that are already in NRS, such as the textbook selection and the curriculum. Like I said, the multicultural component of the standards has been there since 2018. Any other questions that I can? Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you. My name is Lee Hoffman. I wasn't planning on talking tonight, but a couple of things have occurred to me during your discussions tonight. First thing is, I think the letter that you approved tonight is an excellent step. And I just want to encourage all the people back here who applauded for that to indicate their support for that step to the governor, because coming from the board is an important thing, but the more voices that are heard makes it that much more effective. So I just encourage everybody who think that's a good thing to get your friends and your neighbors and everybody else to say, yes, we stand behind the school board. Second thing goes along a bit with something that Ms. Wayne said and a little bit about what Mr. Gerber said. And that's that in planning for the fall, and I said this once before, you actually have essentially a COVID policy that you have adopted that's in place. And I think this board would be well served to bring that up in one of your meetings, review it so you see where it's at. Maybe you're all completely familiar with it, but it seems to me like that ought to be an item for review before you get to August and September and are blindsided again by the governor. It just seems like a review of your policy would be in order. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Other comments?
First, I just want to
Super.
say, letter was great. Thanks, guys. It's wonderful. I appreciate what some of the supporters of AB 261 have to say. But we did used to learn about all of that, all the horrible things that happened in America. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I learned all about it. I don't know about you guys. I didn't grow up here, so I don't know what they taught here back then. But I can tell you what, it's called American history. It's not called multicultural history. It's not called African American history, all this other Asian American history. It's American history. We are all Americans, and it all needs to be taught. I completely agree. I grew up knowing about all of it. Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, slavery, everything. I learned about everything. So I don't know why this is something new. And AB 261 has been on the books forever, but it was never passed until now. Maybe we should ask ourselves why. And as far as Candace's question as to what's being taught in the schools, it's not as simplistic as they're making it sound. Gender sexual identity is being taught in Reno, and it's a hot mess over there. I personally have friends whose school age children, elementary school, are currently in therapy from all the gender identity things that they're being taught over there. And it's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. It's not inclusive. It's not anything. It's awful. Also, to point out that there are currently teachers in Elko teaching non-Nevada approved curriculum. I don't know if you guys were aware of that. They have brought it over from California and they are teaching it in our schools in Elko. So that definitely needs to be looked at. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but it needs to be looked at.
Can you
So
elaborate on what non-Nevada?
it's California approved curriculum. It is not Nevada curriculum at all. It is specifically California curriculum that they are teaching.
What subject, for example?
I would rather not.
Would you mind emailing the board?
Yeah, I will absolutely. Yes, we will absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Christy?
Thank you. So we've talked before years ago about Common Core math and blah, 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 but then they rename it, the standards. And so it changes. And so I'm wondering if that's what's happening with this critical race theory, where it's a different name, but similar concept. One thing that I agree that we should teach equality. We are all created equal. The problem is with the critical race theory or whatever name they have, we talk about equity. Let me tell you the difference between equality, where we're all created equal and we can all do the same thing. We have 24 hours in a day. Choose what you do. That's what we have equality. They want to teach equity. The difference is at the end of the day, we get the same. So that means if I work for 12 hours, I get a loaf of bread. If they work for 2 hours, they get a loaf of bread because that's equity. That's equitable. And so if they're talking about equity, that's the difference rather than equality. We're all equal. I grew up, I went to school, I worked hard. My kids are growing up, I'm teaching them. I know they're working. And so we can't, we want to help people, all of them, with mental health, with disabilities, all that stuff, get to where they can go. But all our potential is not the same. It's just biologics. It just happens. But we want to help everybody. We are all equal with equal opportunities, but it doesn't mean we're going to be equitable at the end of the day. It's based on our effort and what we do. And so that's just one thing, Candace, to answer one of those questions that we are trying to figure out too. Thank you. By the way, thank you for the letter.
Thank you. All right, I want the board to mark on their calendar that June 29th, a week from today, there is a special board meeting and it will be here in the boardroom. The agenda will be coming out Thursday morning. All right.
Same time?
Same time. Yep, 5:30.
The board meeting or workshop?
It is a special board meeting. I was, yes. Anyway. We're at the point for an adjournment. Is there a motion?
So move.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Brian, seconded by Luke to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.